Forward to engaging with you, getting to share our stories, our experiences at the Flatiron School program, and answer your questions. I think that we always love it when there's a good, rigorous discussion and good questions asked. So you've got a lot of us here this evening. We've got two alumni as well as some of the curriculum team. And some people from the Flatiron marketing team, Ash and Tim. So we'll be hearing from everyone throughout the AMA today. But like I mentioned, my name is Joshua Robinson, and I am the director of the program here at Flatiron School. And I work with the curriculum team to develop the program and basically ship the product to the students. And we work with the instructors to train and get them going on the curriculum, and then they facilitate the program with the students. Additionally, we have Dr. Dee Cunningham here with us this evening as a curriculum designer, and Sienna Altice, who are a curriculum designer as well. So to give you a little bit of my story before I invite Dee and Sienna to introduce themselves, I am actually a boot camp graduate myself. So this program used to be another company called Designation initially. And some very good friends of mine started that company, and they asked me if I would like to beta test this new idea of a design boot camp. At that time in 2013, UX and UI design had not sort of taken over in technology, and it was not the force that it is today in the tech industry. And so having a couple of months, I agreed and said, sure, I would love to spend a few months digging into design and figuring out what this thing is we call UX, UI, and product design. So I went through the very small beta boot camp with a couple of instructors, and that was in 2013. And I fell so hard in love with being a designer and working in technology with software engineers, with product managers, and it was just the perfect fit for me. So I spent many years working as an individual contributor, as a UI designer, UX designer, working my way into senior designer and finally managing a whole design team. And then this little boot camp merged with Flatiron School. And they asked me to come and teach at the very boot camp where I had gone through 5 or 6 years earlier. And so I came back and learned to be a UX and UI teacher. And then 3 years later, here I am, the director of the program. And so it's amazing to see the continuity and just the spirit that is in this program all the way from when it was founded back in 2013. So that's my story. That's why I'm here. So I'm going to turn it over to Dee to give you a little bit of his story.
Josh kind of stole my thunder there because I started at my school. I started as a student. I started at the Art Institute of Atlanta as a student. Went through that program for computer animation, and while doing that, also became a teacher's assistant for animation. Throughout that journey, kind of fell in love with game and animation and couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. So I kind of became a generalist within the industry. And once I graduated, I moved on to being in the gaming industry as well as the video and movie industry. And I fell into UX and UI a different way because I started to see that the users that played our games, that did those things, those were really our users, and understanding how to design experiences for them and moving through that. So I came from the entertainment route. And then a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to come back and teach at the Art Institute. And I taught at the Art Institute of Atlanta, Decatur, here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm at. And subsequently, in about 2 years, I moved to become the director of that media department there. So kind of fell in love with UX and UI, understanding people's experiences, understanding brand connection. That's a lot of what I like to look at and do. As a doctor, for my doctorate, I actually did my doctorate on digital products, right? So how do you get people to connect with digital products in the same way of tangible things? I'm very much a tangible person, right? You think about collecting boxes and collecting all those things, and how do you get that same connection if you move to a digital space? So that's what I was very interested in. And then I had the opportunity to come from Mitsubishi Electric here to Flatiron School and get back into teaching. So I'm very happy to be back here, be back in a teaching role.
Thanks, Dee. All right, Sienna, I will toss it over to you.
I should have finished chewing before 5 seconds ago. Okay, at least it's a salad. Okay. Yeah, I am Sienna, Sienna Altiz. My background actually started overseas in instructional design. And so I started off teaching teaching English as a foreign language to classrooms of Chinese kids, which was, I mean, I love Flatiron, but this was such a great job. Like I had, I mean, you can imagine like hot, sweaty kids coming in from school. This is just a short story, but like hot, sweaty classroom of kids with no AC. There's 100 students. There was 100 students in each class, and I had 17 classes of about 100 students each. So I taught almost 2,000 students a week, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So thinking on my toes became something I realized I was actually pretty good at because technology would fail left and right, even if you were using PowerPoint. So learning to adapt curriculums to each class was something I didn't know that I enjoyed, but it was something that I was good at. And so exploring that over time, I started working more with tech, and I went into interaction design while I was in China. And then teaching in a couple more different countries. I came over to the States and I took a UX boot camp class, boot camp, which was the worst boot camp I think ever existed. It was really bad, but I graduated and I learned a lot because I went through all of the resources. That was the best thing they gave us, was the resource list. And I went through and I taught myself any and everything that I could. And it was great. And from there, I got a job with Facebook after that, and contracted with Facebook, contracted with Dell as well as a product designer. And so I've been working a lot in design since I've learned how people think and how I've been learning how people think and process information and how they learn. So I've been in the background of learning design. All of that to say that I enjoy learning how people learn and creating curriculums based on that, especially with a focus on accessibility and teaching to people with different cultural backgrounds, sensitivities, and abilities. So a lot of what I build and enjoy building deals with inclusivity. And so that's a big part, and I love it at Flatiron because we do focus on inclusivity. And we're doing our best to make sure that every ability, sensitivity, and learning style is addressed and included in what we're building.
Awesome. Thank you, Sienna. So I wanted to just give you all a quick preview here. These are some of our product design instructors. Unfortunately, some of them are sitting in on final presentations. Others are teaching some classes for the part-time program tonight, so they weren't available to come and chat with you. But I just wanted to put them up there because the instructors are really the heart of our program. They really enable the success of everything that Dee and Sienna and Bonnie and Anwar and I work on to teach students. It's the instructors, right? They're in their day-to-day. So we really champion and celebrate the expertise, the way that our instructors empower and enable student success throughout the entire program. So let's get into product design a little bit, okay? Like, what the heck is it? Why are we talking about product design? Well, according to HR Forecast's report last year, user experience design and all of these other domains in cloud computing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data sets, VR, AR, blockchain, video production, right? These are the fastest growing jobs. They're also some of the top paying jobs, according to the trend forecast over the next 5 years. So not only is the trajectory for user experience and product design going upward steadily, all of these other domains that you see here, product designers work in all of these different technologies and domains. So we're sort of embedded in all kind of different places that you see growing in the tech industry. And according to LinkedIn's learning report, UX design is one of the top most desirable skills that hiring managers are looking for, along with creativity, persuasion, collaboration, and adaptability. Now, the other things underneath UX design are all skills that we teach in our program. They're all skills that you're going to work on throughout the product design course as you work with peers and instructors and projects. You're constantly learning new ways to creatively express yourself, to persuade your team that you've made the right design decisions, that you're collaborating with others to make sure that you have diverse representation of views in the research and in the product. So the World Economic Forum states it like this: the top skills and skill groups which employers see as rising in prominence leading up to 2025 include things like critical thinking, analysis, problem solving, skills in self-management like active learning, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. Half of that list, Sienna just talked about how she learned that she was able to, under stressful situations, be adaptable, be flexible, problem solve, be creative, right? So you can't always rely on technology to scaffold every solution for you. So these skills make good product designers. And what's so fun about going through a product design course like that is you get to build all of the skills and muscles that are in such desirable traits right now for hiring managers. So who's hiring these product designers? Well, according to Glassdoor's report, everybody's hiring product designers. So a quick search on Glassdoor of a product designer will show you all of these companies. Almost all the companies in the top 500 reports are hiring product design positions today. So what does a product designer do? So all of this talk about how you can get a design or you can get a job in product design is all well and good, but what does that mean that you have to learn to do? What are product designers doing on a day-to-day basis? Well, part of it is research. Product designers learn to develop research strategies that help them uncover competitive opportunities and ideas. They talk to customers and users, and they collect data through quantitative and qualitative methods that we teach, and they learn to synthesize and analyze the information and come back with reports, presentations, and insights about what are the best opportunities. They run usability studies on new prototypes and ideas that they've developed or worked on with their team members. And they test those prototypes to make sure that they're building the right thing the right way. Product designers also work on user experience. They may find themselves sketching brand new ideas, leading ideation sessions where they're generating divergent and interesting, innovative solutions to problem statements and design principles. They might be creating customer journey maps or flows or diagrams that showcase the results of the research that they've done to communicate what are the most important elements that users are asking for, what are the needs and motivations. They could be creating wireframes. They might be making prototypes in software like Figma or Webflow or Adobe XD or Sketch. Product designers also know some user interface design. That means they're comfortable with visual composition. They're able to do interaction design. They're able to do animation prototyping and micro interactions. And they can work within design systems where software engineers and QA engineers collaborate and work together in these tools to create components and elements that go into the user interface. They also work on things like typography and color and layout and grids and hierarchy, and they make sure that the design is usable, that it's pleasant to view, and it's a delight to use. Product designers also work at the intersection of the business strategy. So we teach you to tune into the needs of the stakeholders and business so that your design efforts are aimed at good outcomes, not only for your customers, but for your business and client as well. Therefore, you have to understand the competition and you have to do competitive analysis to see where your market opportunities are. And you have to learn to do facilitation. You have to get all of the stakeholders in the room and different team members, and you have to facilitate a session with them to make sure that you're aligned on your goals and outcomes for projects. So to sum all of that up, what does a product designer do? Well, they work across all the phases of product development, from early exploration to final execution. Some product designers may specialize more in research, or they may specialize more in creating high-fidelity mock-ups in the user interface. Some product designers are generalists and can truly jump into a team at any point in the development process. And then some tend to go deep in certain specialization areas like healthcare, financial tech, VR, AR, blockchain technology, right? It depends on where your passions are, where your experience is, and where you want to ultimately go. But as I showed at the beginning, as a product designer, you can work almost anywhere. If you are interested in technology, if you're interested in service design, heck, if you're interested in library science, we've got something for you, because information architecture is something that we teach and is a big part of successful products. So let's look at the program here. What is the actual student experience? Well, the program is broken up across 5 different phases. Once you commit to attending Flatiron School's product program, we send you pre-work. And the pre-work helps get you ready for day 1, for launch day. We make sure that you have a good understanding of the fundamentals of what product design is about and how to use some of the tools that you're going to be using and software that you use throughout the program. Once launch day happens, you start with phase 1, where you learn all of the research methodology and research presentation skills. Phase 2 is all about UI, so visual composition, UI patterns, Apple's human interface guidelines, Google's and Android's material design, all of the best principles and design principles that you need to make good-looking user interfaces. Next, you work on larger projects. So we have phase 3 and phase 4 are both studio. This is when you take a larger project and you work on it from beginning to end. So you might be doing early research with users. You might be sketching, coming up with different ideas, and then testing those ideas, and then documenting and handing off your design efforts to software engineers. So we teach you to design for different platforms and mediums. You can design for the web, you could be designing apps, you could design for the Apple Watch, right? So you're designing across these different devices. Studio 2, we get into talking about product strategy, which is where you learn some of the prioritization frameworks that are so helpful for making sure that your efforts are aligned with the business goals and needs. Finally, in phase 5, you run a capstone project, which is when you get to specialize in either research, UX, or UI for a project, because we want you to be able to showcase your unique passions and experience in your portfolio. So you're able to choose which of the 3 you want to run for your capstone project in the final phase. You're also starting to learn how to present the design work, because you could make the most beautiful designs in the world, but if you don't know how to communicate your decisions and persuade your audience that this is the right decision, right, then it could all be for naught. So good communication and presentation skills are what we're building in phase 5. So you've graduated, but that's not the end, all right? Once you've graduated, you're moved into the tech prep part of the curriculum. This is where you're going to continue to work and optimize your portfolio and case studies of all of the projects that you've worked on in phase 1 through phase 5. You're also going to start practicing and learning how to do technical interviews, do design exercises and whiteboarding challenges and take-home challenges from hiring managers. Overlapping that, you move into a career prep curriculum. This is when you start your 180 days of career coaching, right? So we don't want you just to graduate and then never see you again, right? You get this really curated support all the way from graduation until you get your job. So you're offered one-on-one coaching. We have resume building workshops and networking workshops. You're going to be able to do practice interviews with your career coach. And they'll coach you to build your own personal brand and website, as well as walk you through what it might look like to negotiate and finally accept a job offer. So what's the daily schedule? What would a day actually be like as a product designer at Flatiron School? Well, you always start with your entire cohort with a morning stand. Okay, now this is the live program. Flex program runs a little bit differently. It's a part-time program. We can get to that in a little bit. But for the live or the online full-time program, you're going to be meeting with your entire cohort and your instructors in a morning stand. This is when you set your goals for the day and discuss any blockers or questions that you might have before moving into a time of presentation and workshop. Okay, so this is a time when you will be able to deep dive into theory and concepts that your instructor is teaching you, and then practice those things, applied learning. You'll break for lunch. Sometimes I've heard of cohorts like watching a movie together during lunch, or doing some kind of like fun lunch activity, or watching a conference talk and discussing it. So lunch can often be a community building time. Once you're done with lunch, you'll come back and move into a lab. Usually instructors will kick off the lab time. The lab is extending what you started to learn earlier in the day. Later in the course, you'll be working on larger projects. So the labs turn into the larger project work. And then you may end the day doing some independent learning, catching up on the reading that will prepare you to be ready for the workshop the next day. And at the end of the day, you typically have a recap to say, I either accomplished my goals or I didn't, and here's what I'm going to do about it. And be able to engage with your instructor and peers at the end of the day with any questions. The software that you're going to learn to use are the most used software in the design industry. Okay, so Figma and Webflow are the top two pieces of software that are used in the design industry right now to do web design and to do application design and prototyping. Okay. Now, we rely very heavily on Figma, but we also show you how learning Figma also transfers to other design software like Sketch and Adobe XD. The software is very similar, and so we want you to feel comfortable using any type of design software, not just one. But Figma is the top adopted software right now, and so it's certainly what we rely heavily on. Additionally, we use Canvas as our learning management system. And we work in Miro, Mural, and FigJam, which are virtual whiteboards. So you might be in there with your team, working with sticky notes from user interviews, or coming up with sketches or ideas all together in a whiteboard. And we also use a piece of software called Replit, which helps us teach you HTML and CSS when you are learning to design for the web. So Sienna talked about how ethical design and inclusive design are really important to our program. We strongly believe that product designers have an ethical obligation to consider the impact of their work on society, on their culture, on their community, okay, and on the environment. So we start off week 1 talking about accessibility, inclusive design in research. We give you ethical frameworks in order to analyze second-order effects and harmful effects that could happen. We prioritize digital well-being and making sure that we're creating a safe learning opportunity for you. And we teach you to think about data privacy. Research. You're going to learn qualitative and quantitative research methods. This is called mixed methods, when you can have both types of research. Part of that is learning to interview users, so you're going to get a lot of good practice at speaking to customers and users and making sure that you can ask questions that are unbiased, that actually get you the information you need. And once you have that, what do you do with it? You have to learn to synthesize the information and pull out user goals and motivations and needs. So you analyze and synthesize the data. Additionally, we're going to show you how best to present your research findings, either to stakeholders or to clients or to your team, so that you can make decisions in the next part. You're going to learn user experience design, things like rapid prototyping, lean UX, sketching and evaluating ideas quickly, building journey maps, making task flows and process flows, as well as things like building site maps, UX writing, and information architecture. You'll also learn user interface design, getting down deep into things like color theory, typography, the difference between designing for an Android versus designing for an Apple device, visual composition principles, hierarchy and data visualization and information design, designing dashboards and tables, as well as working with images, iconography, and how to use layout grids in software. And again, product strategy. So how do you define the problem that you want to work on? Things like properly scoping the problem, being able to do competitive analysis, using frameworks like jobs to be done, using user stories, project management techniques, storytelling, and presenting. These are all critical parts of product strategy. So we teach you those skills. So I thought it would be kind of neat to look at some of the projects that you would find yourself working on. So this is a student who is about to graduate, actually, Justin Shee. And you can see here on the left, he was working on a project where parents would be able to search and find local schools and do deeper research into finding local schools that best fit their child's needs. And he was also working on a gaming dashboard for his capstone project. Here, graduate Debbie Chan was working on a similar project for finding schools for children's needs. And then also an autonomous garden system, which I believe Samuel and Jessica will remember quite well. So maybe we can hear a little bit about that from them. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about their experience with the projects. So at this point, I would ask Dr. Cunningham to talk about some of the common objections that we tend to hear from people that are feeling like, I'm not sure that I could do this. I'm not sure that I'm ready. I'm not sure that I have the experience. I'm not sure that this is the right career move for me. So I'm inviting Dr. D to come in and talk a little bit about that.
So, excuse me. I know, at least for me, like I say, I'm not creative, being one of them. And I kind of felt that way when I was first starting out in a creative field. Like, well, what does it mean to be creative? And when you think about it, as we move throughout the day, all of us are in creative in one way or another. It's just how you manipulate that and look and see where your creative parts come from. Next slide. Not wanting to code, right? So I think one of the best things about what we do, especially with using Webflow and with using Figma, a lot of that is actually visual based, right? So a lot of that coding environment that used to be, when I learned HTML and CSS, it was all handwritten CSS and HTML. Now that's kind of visual, it's built to be visual for visual learners, right? And visual designers. I've heard this one a lot. I was in that same boat when I started my career for my master's degree and for my doctorate. I was teaching and I was also still going to school myself. And it's not, I always found this not what I can't do, it's what I can do, right? So I turn that around, it's what I can do. How much time do I have in a day? Looking at how I can segment my time. As I told Josh earlier before, I am a planned procrastinator. So I like to plan to procrastinate. And I found that really works for me. So I personally was doing a 40-hour-a-week job and still going to school. And I didn't think I could do that at first, but I knew that I wanted something better for myself. So I was able to see how to make it through those pieces. So UX and UI research. That's something that I look at even right now. How do you start that process? You know, what do you do to go through that process? And a lot of what I like to do is just talking to people, kind of what we're doing like right now, right? Qualitative research, just being able to talk to people, get their feedback, get their consensus of how they feel about a product or things of that nature. Same thing for UI. I used to, one of the other jobs that I had was I worked for Mitsubishi Electric. So if you don't know, Mitsubishi Electric is a multinational corporation and they sell heating and air conditioning. So part of our clients were actually corporate clients. So we actually had a lot of the bigger clients like Uber. So we would install their HVAC systems, and we built the software that you use to control that. So I'd have to sit down with the people that installed it as well as the users every day and get research on how they use our system. What were some of the common things that they needed to do with our system on a daily basis? And that was a lot of the research that I would do qualitatively for us to build that research out, to understand better what my users needed from our product.
And I put this in the presentation right before our meeting because I thought it was just a really special thing. So this was a graduate in our second cohort, and he just landed his job. And he posted this in Slack. And I just loved it, where he said, thank you for all the, we were congratulating him on signing the job offer. And he said, a side note for all the students, grads at Flatiron learning this or reading this, I want you to understand if I can do it, anyone can. I don't have a degree, but I work hard. Hard work pays off, which is just what Dee was telling us just a moment ago. So I love that. I thought it was a really special thing for him to post there. And I'll just sort of sum up with this quote for you all. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So with that, what I'd like to do is have our two alumni introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their story and how they adapted, how they unlearned and relearned, and how they're making the transition into this new career. All right, so Samuel, I will turn it over to you first.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Samuel. I'm here in New York City, coming from a long background of working with coffee, like being in the coffee world here. So I've always been in like management kind of side of things, like working directly with people. Everything's been very hands-on. And then the pandemic hit, and I lost that ability to connect with people. And I think that really, it lost the appeal of my work for me. I couldn't like stand there, talk to people. So I started looking, and I've been a musician my whole life. I've always had this like creative side that's not visual. And I started talking to people, and I was thinking about getting into coding, and they were saying, well, you're like, you have this creative side that is, it's not coding, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But I got kind of moved in the direction of product design. So I got into Flatiron. I had an amazing time. And it's been great. So now I graduated about 2 months ago, I think, and have been on the job search since then, doing a lot of like side gigs. I've picked up a part-time job where I teach kids to code after school, which has been really, really rewarding. And it just like, I think the one big thing about making this transition to product design is like a creative field is that everything I do now is like building towards something, right? Like if I'm messing around in like Photoshop and like making an image, like I'm learning skills there. If I'm like making music, I'm working on my like creativity, and I'm building towards something, and like this is my like life and my career now. And it feels good to just like use that creative side of my mind.
Thanks, Samuel. Yeah, Jessica, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica. I was in the same cohort as Sam. We started back in September of last year. Yeah, and you know, it's funny. I come from a background of, well, 15 years ago when I was, in college getting a bachelor's in psychobiology. I mean, yeah, it was all about studying human behavior. So I had that background in research, and it was always something very interesting to me. But you know, in my mid 20s, I took a career pivot, and really wanted to pursue my passion of studying classical art, and moved to Italy, you know, sold everything, kind of moved to Italy to pursue this dream. And yeah, so I studied classical art for 3 years, and I taught at that school in Italy. And yeah, I guess my life did not have to do with anything digital, anything had to do with graphic design. I mean, I was out there with my wooden easel, you know, painting landscapes for years. And then I came back here to Florida, where my family kind of all migrated, and got a job working for a company that works for Disney. So I was a scenic artist on construction sites, you know, painting murals and attractions at Disney. So yeah, I have a very interesting background in the way that when I discovered product design, it was almost like a perfect combination for me in the tech field. So with the research and the I guess visual art background. So for me, it was very interesting. And ever since the program, you know, I had to learn so much when it came to software and just being comfortable, you know, uh, being on the computer all day and learning all this new stuff. So, but you know, the program really it, it it changed my whole life basically. You know, I'm in this tech world now ever since graduating. I haven't stopped. Every day I'm on Figma, every day I'm designing, every day I'm practicing all of my skills as a product designer. I love it. I'm actually working part-time for a company called No Cap Interactive, where I'm a brand identity designer. And I'm doing that for startups that from underfunded and overlooked communities. So investing our talents into these startups, and then later on maybe you know, get paid in some equity once they're successful and launching. So that's been hugely rewarding and fun and great. And everything that I do in my role as a brand identity designer, I mean, I learned all that through the program. That's a part of what we do in those mock projects. So so yeah, it's been great. And also just full-time um, looking for that full-time product design role. But yeah, so anyway, that's just me. Glad to be here.
I love that you painted murals for Disney. I didn't know that. That's so cool. All right. Well, so I think what we'll do now is we'll move into our question and answer portion, where you are able to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there, and type in. And you are welcome to direct your questions at an individual that you've met tonight, either the instructors, or excuse me, either the curriculum or the alumni. Ash and Tim may jump in to answer some program questions if you have questions about tuition or different programs like the Flex program, and you want some details on that. So just go ahead and ask away. We're here to talk.
I have a question while we're waiting. Hey Sam, where is the coolest place that you've performed your music?
Oh, well, I I'm a little biased because I lived in like one of those like houses in Brooklyn. So I would like play in my basement, which was great because I could just like, lay in bed and then come out and do a whole set and then just take a nap while everybody else is playing. So that was really nice. But yeah, just little small things. Brooklyn was great for that.
And follow up, how has being a musician played into you being a product designer?
So I am like a electronic musician, so I play with a bunch of like synthesizers and stuff. Um, I'm like not very good at playing like real time, so there's a lot of like programming that goes into it. And during my product design time, there was a lot of like making these connections of, oh, I have like systems thinking, right? Like I have like design systems already that I approach my music. Like um I have these ways that I approach starting a song, and so that like I can get so that I don't have to think about setting a baseline, so that I can get right into the creative part of it. And I think that is what we learned. A lot of product design is making really good like UI kits and following design systems so that you don't have to worry about those like baseline. Um, you don't get bogged down in the baseline things, and you can really like start thinking about your project.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
I sense a bond forming here.
Oh,
Sienna is also a performing artist, so I'm not going to tell you to Google her name and go watch a certain TED Talk or anything, but I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to promote her music, but I wouldn't do that.
Shit. That little plug right there.
I mean, just hopping on the bandwagon, Sienna did perform for our talent show and it was spectacular. So, not a plug, but a plug. Go check it out. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
We're a diverse team.
All right.
Also, we've got all the questions trickling in. I already answered one. If anybody is curious about ISAs, there is a response in there about what we're currently offering that gives you a little bit more flexibility. First question, UX and UI seem very similar. Can you help me differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I'll take a pass at that one, and then I'm certain that one of the other panelists here can add some additional clarification there. But UX is really more focused on the early parts of trying to define things like what is the actual problem that needs to be solved here. Okay, so as a UX designer, you might be taking some of the research that's been handed to you. You might be doing some research yourself, but you're taking that and you're starting to create early ideas to make sure that you are solving the right problem. Okay, so UX designers will often work in what we call low fidelity or medium fidelity, which means that you're just using wireframes, which are more like boxes. It doesn't look like the final design, but it sort of insinuates what the final design layout might be. And the reason why UX designers do that is because early on, before they're confident that they're making the right choices, they want to be able to test those assumptions. Right? So UX designer might create a medium fidelity prototype in Figma that's just a grayscale prototype that they could then take to users and get some feedback, run some usability tests, and make sure that they're on the right track. UX designers may be defining things like, well, what is the content strategy that's going to be on this marketing website, right? And they may be doing some early wireframing and mock-ups for that. UI design is much more focused on the interaction of the interface and what the interface looks like. And UI designers use design principles in order to create usable and pleasant designs. So UX is usually earlier in defining what the product is or the best way to solve the problem. UI designers are sort of taking it from 50 to 100 and working with software engineers and developers to actually design the high fidelity product. So anybody else want to add? All right. So let's see. Another question. Reasons for not getting into UX and UI design. Should a person be concerned about being too old? For example, starting in your 40s. Great question. Go ahead, Dee. Oh, you're muted.
Honestly, to say no, I would say like that's an advantage. For myself, I'm in that same category because of the fact that I really do love products. Like I love industrial design, I love cars and things of that nature. So I have a huge range of things that I'm interested in that actually influences my work as a user experience designer and a UI designer. It helps me honestly that age. So I don't see that as a negative at all. I see that actually as a positive.
I want to chime in on that also. I would say more than age, which I can understand the question, but I would say more than age, the biggest setback that you could ever have, and this goes for anyone as a designer, is an unwillingness to learn. There's things that change, there's trends that change, there's different theories and principles that are built or reintroduced from past great designers, and now we're learning from what was it that we were talking about a few weeks ago, Josh? Like traditional ways that like cultures have designed, and implementing those into new like design patterns and reintroducing those to like our modern day systems. And so I would say the one thing that would hold anybody back in being any type of designer, whether it's UX, UI, or product design, interactive design, whatever, is an unwillingness to learn. If you're rigid and you're saying that you're going to stop learning here, then just drop the ability to be a designer. But so as long as you're open to learning, you'll be fine, because we all have a unique expertise and unique experience and perspectives that will always add to what it is that we're all learning at a base level.
I saw Jessica like nodding a lot to that. So Jessica, what do you think?
Yes, I mean, as a woman in her late 30s, going into this brand new field, yeah, I would say, just piggybacking on what everyone else said. All of the years of experiences that you've had, I mean, that only adds value to you as a designer, let alone a candidate for a role as a designer for any company or that's going to hire you. It only gives you more flavor. So yeah, so again, it's a positive. So yeah, definitely, it's all good.
Especially when it comes to like research and UX, like there's sort of an emotional intelligence that comes, I think, with more experience that really helps out a lot when you're talking to users and you're going through that research process. So having that experience, and there's just a depth there, I think, that comes through, and that is a benefit. Great question. Let's see. Go ahead, Ash. What's the breakdown you've seen in employment between UX and UI? Good question.
Yeah, so great question. Right now, obviously, Josh being the director might have a little bit of more insight, but we obviously have had 3 graduating classes so far. 2. Okay, I was like 2 or 3. So 2 graduating classes so far. Some of these folks are still looking for employment, and we are very, very proud of them because they've made it this far. Right now, the folks that do have jobs, it's sort of a 50-50 split so far, unless I am mistaken, but at least from my perspective, that's what I've seen. Ultimately, it will just depend on what you're interested in and what you see the most value in, and what you're passionate about, to be quite honest. We won't push you in one direction or the other. It's really boils down to what you enjoyed the most while you were working through the program. And then the other question, oh, unless Yana, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, just really quick. And I stress this because I realized that I graduated from this crappy boot camp because of whatever that experience was to I started working at Facebook. So let me tell you the in between. The in between was I I busted I sweated a lot through building my portfolio. I made sure, and I Googled, I LinkedIn'd, I did all of the awkward, like, I Binged, I found every portfolio that I could, and I made sure of people who had the job that I wanted. And I made sure that my portfolio looked like theirs in whatever capacity I had to do. And it paid off. So it took a while to build my portfolio based on minimum experience. Minimum experience. I built up my portfolio to the point where recruiters couldn't tell that I went to a crappy boot camp. And so I would say that when it comes to thinking about employment, which is a great question, it the our what word am I looking for? The group that helps the students go through the career track and to getting the job.
Career services.
Thank you. Career services. So career services can do but so much if your portfolio is not yet ready. And so it does take you to finish your portfolio and continue building it and rebuilding it and rebranding it as you're learning, so that when you get in front of a recruiter, when you get in front of HR, you're ready to talk about your portfolio. So there's that aspect of it too. Flatiron prepares you and gives you the foundation of what you need. You get to take it from there. So in the process of you interviewing, you're still learning about yourself and what companies are looking for, but it's important for you to know that your portfolio, it depends on you to be built. Flatiron doesn't do that for you. So that also depends on how long you're waiting to get a job. I just want to put that out there.
I'd also say that it's one of the things is the titles that you see for companies can be very confusing. You may go to IBM, and I know Jessica and Samuel are like, yep. You may go to like IBM's employment page, and they have a role called interaction designer. And the roles and responsibilities may be something like you would think would be a UI designer. And then you may go to Microsoft and see something called a full stack designer. And that's really sort of a little bit of UX and UI. So why Flatiron School really helps you in that regard is that because we teach you enough of everything, they all overlap. The UX fundamentals help you be a better UI designer. The UI fundamentals will help you be a better researcher because you're able to create better presentations, better reports. You're able to make your own prototypes, and hand off to people. So all of these things work together and enhance one another. So I think that the roles can be confusing, especially when the titles kind of, are you an interaction designer? Are you an information architect? Are you a UI engineer? Are you it can get to be a lot, but really what you're looking at are the skills. Honestly, titles be damned, look at the skills and see whether or not what most of those product design type jobs out there, see what those skills are and see if they match what I'm telling you we teach here at the school. And for the most part, I'd say, yep.
Yeah, just to rephrase what you said, Joshua, is that my career coach told me that an industry secret is that UX, UI, they absolutely mean something different. They absolutely have real definitions. But the hiring managers who sometimes put up jobs don't know those differences. And so they will sometimes just put up a job with the title of the trendiest title or something. And so it really is important to read the job description and see what it's asking for, rather than being like, oh, well, IBM wants a UX designer only. So I'm UI, so I can't do that.
All right, Mia, You say you have a design background but have never been a tech person. How difficult would you say to learn the tech school skills and knowledge needed for the course, as well as the actual job? Boy, that's a really great question. Ash, go right ahead.
I obviously from an outsider's perspective, the way I like to speak to the product design program when I'm talking to students throughout the admissions process is just it's a lot more tech adjacent than a lot of other roles that you'll find in the tech industry. And obviously, you all can paint a little bit more of a better picture. But it sort of relies on all of the soft skills that I feel like we already have as human beings. So empathy, creativity, logic, just thinking very consciously about the different types of people that you're speaking to and the different experiences that they're bringing to the table. And I feel like all of that is sort of wrapped up in product design. And obviously, the technical side of it will be just the tools that you're using to design. But aside from that, that really is like what you're getting yourself geared to dive into. So long as you're passionate about learning, obviously diving into a career in tech is all about being a lifelong learner and sort of embracing the fact that what you know today is not going to be the way that we're doing things 2 to 3 years from now. If you're okay with that and you love being creative, love to create, love just putting yourself out there, product design is probably a really great place for you to take a peek into and hopefully just research more. Obviously, if any of you want to add on a little bit, but that's at least how I like to debunk product design a little bit for folks coming into our program that don't necessarily know much about it.
I can just add a little bit because I really struggled with the tech part of it, learning the new software, the tools that I had never used before. Like I said, I was outside most of the time. Now I'm on my computer, but it's great. But the program, I mean, I just had to spend a little more time, and it was a little more frustrating. But once I learned, Figma, now I use Figma every day, and it's like so wonderful to go into these roles, as a product designer or a designer and just be comfortable and be able to, have the freedom to design and create without those frustrations anymore. And it's like I am a whole new person, and it's a great feeling of accomplishment. So the program will definitely make it easy for you to learn everything you need to know and feel good about it a few months later. So yeah.
And then I have one more thing, like from a graduate's perspective, all of the kind of like one shots that I've done, like things with like gigs with clients where I've made their website, redone their web presence, things like that, that I've done since graduation. All of that has been no code. And so it's been through platforms where there's absolutely no coding required, which has been really great because I know a little HTML, but not enough to do, to like build an entire website off of that. And the focus really now, and all of the jobs that I'm applying for are no code and everything. So in terms of like learning the tech skills of coding, that's like absolutely not required.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Samuel and Jessica. I wanted to add the reason we teach HTML and CSS is because tools like Figma and Webflow are now making it so much easier for designers to collaborate with software engineers. So software engineers may be in Figma just as much as a designer. So it's facilitating or it's scaffolding this collaboration and bringing those two worlds closer together. So because that is happening, it is really helpful for product designers to have a just fundamental understanding of what it is to structure a web page, what it means to style elements on a web page, because you're going to be collaborating with software engineers and just understanding a little bit about the mental models that the software engineers will be bringing to the discussions make you more competitive, because in hiring interviews and challenges, you'll be able to speak a little bit to that. And that's going to make you more marketable as a designer. So that's why we get into HTML and CSS a little bit, so that you are able to be a better work partner on a tech team.
There's one more question. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, cool. My AirPods died. I was like, I hope my audio is going out. One last question hanging out here so far. How does human-computer interaction compare or relate to UX UI?
That's a really good question. UX and UI draw from many different areas. Human-computer interaction is one of the fundamental areas that UX and UI draw from for things like design principles, for interaction principles and interaction design. UX and UI also draw from the social sciences, anthropology, sociology, right? So when you're learning to interview users, we pull a lot of methodology from the social sciences, human psychology, right? So UX design really studies how human behavior is, how they interact with digital products versus, in-person services. And this becomes a big part of the conversation when we talk about design ethics, right? Because part of what we're trying to teach you is that there are certain design patterns out there that are actually dangerous. And we want you to be able to recognize that. We want you to be able to see it out and call it out for what it is. And definitely don't use it, right? And that comes from like the behavioral and persuasive design and design patterns. So it comes from human psychology as well. I could go on and on about all the different like influences that product design, UX, UI draw from, but human-computer interaction, which really is kind of it started out as more of like the academic side of things, not as much like the practitioner side. UX and UI are probably more on the like practical side of human-computer interaction. Human-computer interaction is more of the theory. All right, well, any more questions? We'll leave it open for another minute or so. These are all such good questions, and thank you for asking them. If there's anything you want to know about the student experience day to day, please do ask, because I know Sam and Jessica would be keen to answer. Maybe while we wait to see if there's any more questions, Samuel or Jessica, one of you could talk about what it's like to like participate in the collaborative workshops and lectures that we do, because I think that's a big part of the student experience, is collaborating with others in Figma.
I can go first, I guess. Yeah, so I think the collaborative workshops were, for me, again, for somebody who I'm so new to learning this new software, a little bit insecure about it. I think for me, those were the most frustrating at the beginning and became the most valuable for me after the fact or towards the end. So yeah, and just the pacing of it was also, again, this is an intensive boot camp type program. So it's a lot all at once. And it can be overwhelming at first, to be honest. But again, that only helps. Well, for me, it only helped me become an even stronger designer and ready for whatever is going to be thrown at me and in whatever time that I'm given, and also working with others and using the different tools and learning all of the skills as well. So yeah, that was a very helpful part of the program for sure. Those workshops, they were challenging, but in a really great way.
This is not directly related to this, but it's been something that's been on my mind this week because one of the things I liked the least in Flatiron or in the curriculum was we had to make a slide deck, which is like a PowerPoint presentation about our final project. And we had been working on our final project for weeks, and we had to, and then it was, there were so many challenges and like so many revisions, and then we had to make a PowerPoint to present it. And I was like, this is so much work. I don't want to present it. It's all right there, and so that's something that I was really like, I did it, but so anyway, but this week I have a interview that is they're asking me to present a design challenge that I did last weekend, and so I have to make a presentation, and I'm like, I'm so glad that we actually did this design. We did this presentation because I know exactly what I'm doing, and like all of those skills are coming back to me as I'm like making this. And the fact that I was like angry at it at the time is like makes it so much more powerful because it's all stuck in my head. So, there will be things that like will be difficult in the course, absolutely, but like they come back to help you for sure.
Yeah, one of our big principles that we like to talk about is work with the garage door up. So we're always trying to get everyone to sort of work in the open, work together, fail together, learn together, get better together, sharpen each other. And so we place a big emphasis, I think, on making sure that you're constantly being pushed to get comfortable talking about your work, showing your work, putting it out there before you've made too many decisions and, then you can't change it, getting feedback, giving other people feedback. Design critique is not an easy thing to learn. It's not an easy thing to get comfortable with, but over time and repetitions, you do get very comfortable. And you crave the feedback. You start to like learn, you're like, oh, it's been too long. I haven't had enough feedback. I'm going to go. Like you want that because it makes you better. But it can be awkward to put yourself out there and put your work out there. But there's no better way to get. There's no faster way to get better, I should say. All right. Well, no more questions have come in. Ash, do you want anything else that you want to impart here?
No, just thanking everybody again for deciding to spend a random Wednesday evening with us. It's been a pleasure answering your questions, getting to know some of you a little bit better. If you all have any questions, you will receive a follow-up email. You are more than welcome to send emails back. I will most likely get those, and I'm happy to help out however I can. But yeah, if you're on the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Central USA, I hope you're having a good night. I hope you've had dinner or will have dinner soon. And hopefully we'll all get a chance to speak again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.